Okay, it's been a little while since I've done a video. About a year and a half, I think. Anyway, I went ahead and deleted all my old videos too, because my ideas have evolved a bit in the past few years, and I wanted my channel to reflect that. Anyway, what I want to talk about today is the much discussed topic of ethics and atheism. I've seen lots and lots of videos out there tackling this subject, and I haven't really been satisfied by any of them. I don't really think any of them are particularly adequate or up to the challenge. So I figured I would give it a try myself. And I haven't seen every video, so don't get hurt. You can always, assume that I didn't see yours. What I want to address specifically is the charge against atheists that there can be no absolute morality without God. Now, in tackling this subject, it's important to understand at first a few basic things about ethical theory. First, that there are two basic kinds of moral theories. There are cognitivisms and non-cognitivisms, and the difference between the two kinds of moral theories lies in how each views moral propositions. Now, what is a moral proposition? Well, a moral proposition is a proposition with moral content. Now, that kind of sounds like a smart-ass answer, and it is, to a degree, but let me just go ahead and say more. First, what is a proposition? Well, a proposition is a kind of linguistic construct, one of several kinds. You could also refer to them as statements. For instance, the sky is blue, there is a unicorn holding the camera on the point of his horn very steadily, I'm sitting on my bed. These are all propositions. And these normal propositions have a property called truth aptness. That is, they are the kind of thing to which it makes sense to ascribe a truth value. Now, for contrast, let's look at two other kinds of linguistic constructs which do not have this property of truth aptness: interrogatives and imperatives, which could also be called questions and commands. Now, for instance, the question, what time is it, or what day of the week is it? Those are not truth apt. It doesn't make sense to say that they are either true or false. It's simply incompatible with the way we think about language. And the other one, imperatives, commands. The command, shut the door, or go fuck yourself, or something like that. Those are not truth apt, because we do not think of them as being either true or false. It just doesn't make sense. Propositions are truth apt. It makes sense to say that they are either true or false. Now, moral propositions are simply propositions with moral content, like I said. Moral content meaning something to do with right and wrong, good and bad, and so forth. Now, an example of a moral proposition would be murder is wrong, or stealing is wrong, or something to do with right and wrong. So going back to the two basic kinds of moral theories, well, cognitivist moral theories view these moral propositions as being truth apt. Again, that they are the kind of linguistic construct to which it makes sense to ascribe a truth value. And the other kind, non-cognitivisms, assert the opposite, that these moral propositions are not truth apt. That is, it doesn't make sense to say that they are either true or false. Now, there is a further subdivision between these two kinds of moral theories. Cognitivisms are generally divided up into moral realisms and error theory, while the non-cognitivist moral theories are typically divided up into emotivisms and prescriptivisms. Now, I'll explain each of these four kinds in turn. I'll start with the non-cognitivisms. Now, remembering that non-cognitivist moral theories assert that moral propositions are not truth apt, we go on to find that emotivisms, one of the two flavors of non-cognitivist moral theories, assert that not only are they not truth apt, but they are not propositions at all. Rather, they are sort of expressions of internal emotion. Kind of like if you were to stub your toe and you said, ow. I mean, ow, we don't think of as being either true or false. It's just me asserting how I feel. So the emotivist would say that a moral proposition, for instance, murder is wrong, is actually us saying, boo, murder, or no, I don't like murder, something like that. But not a proposition directly. And the other kind of non-cognitivist moral theory which I mentioned is the prescriptivism. Now, prescriptivist moral theories say that moral propositions are actually imperatives, commands. So they would interpret murder is wrong as actually a way of saying don't murder, or stealing is wrong as a way of saying don't steal. Now that I've taken this time to explain what the non-cognitivist moral theories are, I should go on and say that they are not really useful to us in this pursuit in addressing the charge that you cannot have absolute morality without God, primarily because they are descriptive theories. They attempt only to describe what we are doing when we are talking about morality. They do not at all attempt or pretend to tell us anything about what we should do or how we ought to act. So the only real reason to even know they exist for the purposes of this topic is to have contrast, have a deeper understanding of metaethical theory. So now, let's ignore the non-cognitivisms for now. Going back to the cognitivist moral theories, again the ones which assert that moral propositions are truth-apt, we have moral realisms and error theory. Now, moral realisms go a step further in asserting that not only are moral propositions truth-apt, but also that some of them are actually true, while error theory asserts that they are all false. Now, let me give you some examples of moral realisms. The one we are most familiar with is divine command theory, essentially the moral theory that says, we should do whatever God says. God makes the rules, that kind of thing. This is the absolute morality to which the religious refer when they are talking about, their own morality. Now, there are other kinds of moral realisms. For example, Platonism, which is the view that there is a realm of the forms. It's kind of another dimension or another, place, not exactly a part of the universe like heaven or something, wherein there exists a form of the good, a kind of entity which really is what it is to be good and what it is to be bad, that kind of thing. It sounds a little weird, but keep that in mind. That'll help us later on. There are still other kinds of moral realisms. Most forms of utilitarianism, the view that we should do whatever is best for the greatest number of people, are moral realisms. Ethical egoism, the view that we ought to do whatever is in our own self-interest, that is a moral realism. Then there's social contract theory, the view that we all sort of come together as a society to literally create what is right and what is wrong. And there are lots and lots of different kinds of social contract theory, but that's the gist of all of them that I've heard of anyway. Now, those are all moral realisms. So, already with this understanding, we can answer the charge that there could be no absolute morality without God simply by pointing to any of these other moral realisms. All an absolute morality is a moral realism. So, if we are not divine command theorists, as in we do not believe in God, we can still have absolute morality by believing in Platonism, or utilitarianism, or ethical egoism, or social contract theory. So in the most literal sense, religious people who make this charge against atheists are mistaken. However, there is a problem. And in bringing out this problem, I'm going to go ahead and explain that fourth kind of moral theory, error theory.